Hi everyone, it's Jill Foster here for Penny Black with another Positively Penny Black video. And during these difficult times, we are committed to bringing our followers some positive messages of inspiration and crafty distraction. So let's go ahead and get started on today's card. Today's card features some more brushstroke stamping, and our brushstroke stamps are simply stamps that are sort of a solid image that you can ink or color directly onto the stamp and then stamp to give the look of a hand painted image, as opposed to an outline that has been stamped and then colored in. So today's brushstroke stamp is Nature's Glory, and I will have a full supply list up on screen at the very end of the video. So if you want to check out any of the stamps, the colors of markers or inks, everything will be listed up on screen, and you can just hit pause and check it out in more detail at that time. So as we're making today's card, I do have a few tips for you. The first, when you're working with our brushstroke stamps, is don't be afraid to try different papers. Some papers are going to absorb more of your ink, and some are going to let them sit a little bit more up on the surface and give you a little more time to play and blend with those inks. So I have found I really like using Bristol smooth paper for stamping with these brushstroke stamps with markers, because it does allow that ink to sort of sit up on the surface and makes it very blendable after you have stamped. So to begin, I am coloring directly onto this Nature's Glory stamp using Arteza Real Brush pens. These are a water-soluble or a water-based marker, and the brush tip of these pens works beautifully for getting into the details. As you can see on this stamp, there's lots of layers of leaves and flowers and berries, so I can get all of those and color them in exactly with the color that I want, placed right where I want. I'm going to use a mix of green and some turquoise on these leaves for a little variation instead of just the standard color for your leaf. And this is a water-based marker, like I said, and you can try this with your other water-based markers or whatever you may have on hand, such as your Tombow dual brush pens or memento markers, your zig markers, distress markers. Those all will work for this technique, although you will get a little bit different look with each style of marker that you are using. So now that I'm done with my leaves, I'm going to go in and color my flowers. I'm starting with a lighter yellow, and again, the exact colors will be listed up on screen at the very end of the video. And I'm coloring in all of those flowers. Now the video has been sped up, but you can take your time when coloring these in, because we will be misting this with water, which will reactivate any of those inks that may have dried. After I got that light yellow onto the flowers, I'm using more of a rusty orange color here towards the center of the flowers. And then for the berries, I'm going to use a bit of pink and then a bit of red to add some differentiation between any of the berries that are right next to each other. And you can really see this on the stamp when you're coloring on it, but if you're having any difficulty, just have your stamp packaging handy when you are doing your coloring so that you can help see exactly what you are coloring. Now I'm going to mist this with water and stamp this right onto my Bristol paper. And my next tip for you is you can add additional blending with a paintbrush before this is dry. You can even add a little bit after it is dry, but I find I just like to have a paintbrush, a little bit of water, and a paper towel handy, ready to go right after I stamp this. So I am going to just dip my paintbrush into the water, pat it off on a paper towel so it is not too wet, and then I can just go in and add any blending that I would like to soften this image. Now whenever you're coloring with a marker directly onto a stamp, it's not going to give you as even of coverage as you would get if you were padding a flat ink pad onto the flat surface of the stamp. So that's why it is very handy to be able to go in here and just add a little bit of blending to even out any of your inking with that marker, and it just gives it a little bit of a softer look. Now the flowers look pretty great as is, so you could definitely just stop right there. But another tip is you can restamp or add more shading with the marker directly to the paper. So if you want to have sort of a more dynamic or a more defined image, you can just take these markers right to the paper and add some additional shading, some additional blending. I like bold colors, so for me, I like how that adds to the overall image. Here I'm just sneaking in a little blending there with my brush and some water. But when you miss that, like for those berries, for example, sometimes you may find that it's hard to tell or they become a little bit more blobby. That's when you can go right in with your marker and just define them a little bit more. Here I wanted more yellow to show through, so I colored with the yellow onto the markers. I can also darken up the center of the flowers just by coloring with the marker directly onto the paper. I also decided I wanted sort of the branches of this to be brown instead of green, so I'm just going right over those. The brush tip on these markers, if you use a very light pressure, you can get a pretty fine tip, which is nice for adding in the details such as the branches or the stem on the flowers. And again, I'm just playing some more with the shading on those berries just to make sure that they are seen as individual berries and not just one big large one. And then finally, my favorite tip for stamping with brushstroke stamps, if you're looking and wondering, how can I finish this now and make a card? This formula always works for me. I love how it looks with the big, bold brushstroke stamps, is to just finish it with an inked background. So here I have this frame. I've used it on several cards. I just used one of our frame die cuts, and I'm using the negative piece that is left over that creates this frame mask. I'm taping it onto my panel. I am sure here that my stamping is completely dry, and I am adding some inking using an ink blending tool and a foam pad. I'm using an archival ink, but you can really use whatever ink that you like. The color, I picked this just because I love this color. It's kind of a very soft minty turquoise green color, and I'm focusing the inking mainly along the perimeter of that mask. I don't want to go over too much of the flowers. I want those to keep their true color, and I want to leave a bit of a white glow in the center of the card, but I want to be sure that I have a crisp edge and I can actually see where that inking makes the rectangle in the center of the card. So there is the reveal. And then to finish this off, I have stamped our sentiment using the Million Thanks transparent set. I felt like this was a really great sentiment stamp for this particular card because I was able to stamp part of the sentiment in color and part in brown. So I wanted to tie in those pink berries over to the right hand side of the card, so I used a pink ink to stamp the thanks and then the brown for the bunches to tie into the rest of the card. So here is a look at that finished card using our brushstroke stamps. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and also ring that bell so you receive a notification each time we post a new video, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up too. We also invite you to fill your feed with our Facebook, Instagram, and blog posts, which we are filling with all things happy. And I've linked to all of these in addition to all of the stamps used today down in the YouTube description box below. Thanks so much for watching, and here are the supplies used on today's card.